Here I'd like to talk about some of the printing terms that you'll need to know for your Week 2 assessment exam. And I'm going to show you a website that will really help you to determine these terms and save them if you want to for future use. You can either bookmark this website or you can print it out because it has quite a number of technical terms that are used in the professional printing industry. This is called printusa.com/GLOS for glossary. And it's a very long page that basically goes through in alphabetical order. And there are myriad terms in the professional printing industry. Some terms you may be familiar with, and some maybe not. The art and technology of professional printing is very dense. It is very detailed. People who want to become professional printers need to go to school and study the art. They need to become certified. They need to maintain their credentials throughout their career, and there are very high standards to which they're held in their career. So it is a respected artisan field, being a professional printer. There's a lot to know, there's a lot to keep current with, and it's highly respected to be a master printer in the industry. So this page goes through, and you can see there's quite a few pieces of information here. If you should come across a term that you need to identify that is not here, you can certainly Google it. I am sure that the information is online for terms that may not be here, but this I find to be quite comprehensive and good information to know, particularly for those of you that might want to go into graphic design fields that will have printed pieces as your deliverables. So do refer to this site. It's here for you as a resource, and I'm sure it will be very helpful for you now and then going forward. I'm going to cover the printing process in a couple of different videos. This first one is going to talk specifically about the four-color process. This is not the same as digital printing. Digital printing is much more widely used today than it has been, but the four-color process still is extremely viable. It is, it has been the industry standard for many years. Digital is becoming more popular now, but four-color is still very much alive and well, and it's helpful to understand exactly what happens. During the process, you may find yourself having to work with a printer to produce a piece, and it's not only helpful to know the information, but it's actually really fascinating. If you ever have a chance to go visit a printing house and get a tour, which many people are happy to give, a lot of printing places love to give tours and show you what's going on, it's really fascinating to see the process. Printing was invented, or it became well known, way back in the 1450s. In Germany, Johannes Gutenberg, as you may know, is credited as being the father of modern printing. And although it was being done in the Far East before that, Gutenberg is the one that's really being credited with the printing press and the whole idea of movable type and reproducible printing as we know it today. And this ended up being quite an amazing technological breakthrough in the Middle Ages, and it actually helped to usher in the Renaissance and the start of modern history because of the idea that you could print things and have them distributed, and knowledge and ideas and information could be widely distributed where it hadn't been that easy to do before. So here's a simple depiction of the type of press that he was using back in the 1400s, and then this image on the right is much more modern, and this looks to me like it was could have been a newspaper press by virtue of the long rolls of paper that go through. And these things were technologically cutting edge during their times and quite intricate, as you can see. So how does the process work? The four-color process works with, as you might guess, four colors of ink. And they're known as cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, CMYK. And CMYK is considered to be a color model, and you see those terms on Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign as a way to think about how the colors come together. digitally, but also can be separated out for the 4-color printing process. Now you'll notice that the C, M, and Y colors look like the primary colors, the blue, the red, and the yellow, and they mix together along with the black to form the colors in the visible spectrum that we see. So this middle graphic uses all 4 of those colors, and what we are seeing are dot screens or halftone screens made up of dots of color of the 4 colors. They are made into what's called color separations. An image is taken and separated out into 4 different color separations, one of each of these colors, and the size of the dots, the amount of the ink on those separations is all dependent upon how much of that color is in the final colored image. Then they all come back together and the dots mix together to form the final image. And this is something that you can't see with the naked eye. You'd have to look at it under a magnifier. But you can sometimes see, if you look very closely at a magazine printed piece, for instance, you can start to see some of the little dot patterns forming. And it's really amazing that these little dots can come together and form a beautifully rendered photographic image. So they get separated out and then they come back together when printed. And this graphic at the bottom here shows a simplification of that 4-color process press, where the paper it goes through 4 different printings. I don't know exactly the order of the colors, but I know that black is always the last one to go on the top to bring the image all together and to really set it. So that is a quick overview of the 4-color process. Now this process is not the printing process, but it's more or less the design process. And if you were a graphic designer in a company that was producing print work, you would firstly start by meeting with the client, defining the project, gathering all of the requirements or the specs, getting the budget and the schedule, getting the initial design ideas and output ideas, like what type of printing they wanted. Then you would go and select your vendors. Vendors would be, for instance, the printing company. Who is going to print it? Who is going to do the photography? Who's going to provide the paper? What kind of special finishes are needed? That sort of thing. So you choose all the people that are going to help you with the project. Then you go into pre-press and design. This step is the one that you're probably the most familiar with because it's what you do in your assignments for class. You get your ideas, you craft them, you revise them. Then step 4, you will meet with your client again to discuss any printing issues. You would meet with your printer as well to discuss any problems or challenges. You would then process the film and into the color separations. You would figure out who's going to proofread it and settle with your client on that. And then once that's all done and signed off on, you go to the printing press with the material and you hand it off, and then you review a press proof. You have to go to the press and make sure that it's coming out the way you need to, and check everything, make adjustments, sign off on it, and that is the process. So it's a fairly lengthy process, but it's all essential for good quality work. This slide shows 2 of the glossary terms that you might need to know for your exam: signatures and pagination. When things are printed professionally, the pages are not printed in chronological order. They're printed up in what's called printer's spreads, because when you look at a book and you look at pages, you have to have the right page on the right side, okay? So the pages are set up in what's called signatures, and a signature is a group of folded pages, like a little clump of pages that go together. And 16 pages are a traditional size for a signature. So this graphic on the right shows you how the pages would be laid out in these printer's spreads for proper printing, okay? And this is also called pagination. So page 1 is on the same side of the page as 16, okay? On the other side of page 1 is page 2, and on the other side of 16 is 15, okay? And you can start to see a logical flow as each group is printed. And these are designed and laid out such that once all sides are printed and the pages are stacked together and folded, it will look like a logical progression in the book, in the signature. Okay? So pagination is a special way of rearranging the pages so that when they're printed they come out correctly. And a signature, by the way, is always an even number, and it's usually a multiple of 4 because of the way that the double-sided pages work and the the paper. You can't have an odd number in there. The folds, there are many different ways that printing presses and printers can create folds, and you can see the different ways here. You'll notice that some of the folds are fairly intricate, but they're folded by machine and they're very exact, and then they're trimmed. The folded edges are trimmed so that you only have the one fold, so all of the pages end up being separate. So you can print many different pages on one sheet of paper, fold it up in a certain way, trim a couple edges, and you have a little signature right there. And it's all done automatically. Bindings. When all of the signatures are done, how are you going to attach them all together? There are several different ways, and some of them you've seen before, such as 3-ring binders. That's for separate pages. Just punch holes and bind them with 3-ring binders. Spiral binding, you may have seen this with simple notebooks or calendars. A spiral binding is really nice because you can open up a page flat and make it easy to read. A saddle stitch is not really a stitch, it's a staple, and it is a staple inserted at the fold or in the saddle of the pages. And a lot of calendars or simple booklets are saddle stitched. If they're not too thick, that's a great way to bind them together. A perfect binding is for something that is thicker, like a book with many signatures. You get your group of signatures, you put them all together, and then you clamp them together so that they're nice and clean and nice and tight, and then you glue a piece of paper over all of them so they're held together tightly before they're put into the cover. So a perfect binding is largely based upon very good gluing techniques. Lastly, we're going to talk about paper stock. Stock is the term used to describe what paper is in printing. And if you've ever seen a professional a professional paper sample book, such as pictured here, you'll notice that there are so many different colors of paper and so many different colors of white. White paper isn't just white paper. There are so many different colors and shades and tones. There's also different coatings. You can have an uncoated or a matte finish. You can have a glossy finish. You can have semi-gloss. You can have a textured paper. You can have smooth, and then you have different weights. The thickness of the paper is called the weight, and it's usually done in pounds. For instance, 24-pound text is a typical photocopy paper weight, and if it goes up to a higher number like 60, you start getting thicker weights, cover stock, then you get into card stock and thin cardboards. So the weight, the finish, the color, and the coating are all things you want to consider when you're choosing your papers. And this website, ninapapers.com, is a professional paper company site, and they have a lot of information on it for checking out different types of papers. So that's part 1 of the printing processes overview, as well as some glossary terms for you. It's a lot to take in, but these resources are available to you to save and to review. This PowerPoint is in your classroom, and good luck with exploring more about printing, and hopefully you'll find it to be a fascinating topic. Thanks.